just embracing and taking the time to appreciate how far you've come, I think is so powerful. And it's just so good for your mind and your happiness. And it really gives you just a sense of gratitude for what you have learned and what you have accomplished.
Welcome to the Impact Driven Entrepreneur, the podcast that helps you expand your reach and convert that reach into clients so you can lead your tribe with confidence and create change in the world while living the life you desire. And now your host, certified business coach and consultant, Mariana Ruiz.
Want to increase your sales without so much hustle? Oh my gosh. Let's talk about doing funnels. Funnels are like the thing right now, but whether it's challenge, a tripwire, a webinar, or even getting people on the phone, guess what? All of that is the same. It's a sales process and what some people call funnels, okay? And I want to help you with your sales process because here's the thing. When you can really master and improve that process, you will get more sales in your business. Normally inside of my 6-month coaching program, what I do is I actually look at everything that my clients do. I look at all of their copy, all of their emails, everything that they're doing inside of a launch or outside of a launch. And really, I want to bring that element to a small intensive for you. So what I want to do is offer you the opportunity for me to look at all of your emails, all of your copy, whether it's a challenge, a funnel, a webinar, or a sales call. I will actually listen to your sales call. Yeah, you heard that right. Okay, so in order to get this amazing offer, it's called a funnel intensive. You can find it at impactdrivenentrepreneur.com/work-with-me. You can purchase there right away, or if you want to get on the phone and just make sure it's a good fit for both of us, I'd be happy to chat with you. Let's optimize that sales process so that you can start generating more sales in your business without the grind. Hey there, welcome back to the Impact Driven Entrepreneur podcast. Today, I have Ericka Eller. She is a wife, a mom of 3, and a certified wellness coach, a career woman, and an entrepreneur. She understands the struggle that women face with how to manage all the things and still find time to be healthy. She has a passion for sharing her career-minded women the best strategies to manage stress and maximize success. And Ericka offers grace-based coaching practice that promotes sustainable wellness. And today, what we really wanted to talk about was this whole topic of burnout and how she has been able to manage her energy levels and all of this. And so I'm really excited to have you here. Welcome, Ericka.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Mariana.
Yeah, so let's get into like how you started off as an entrepreneur and what your path has been.
Gosh, so it's actually funny because my entrepreneurial roots run way deep, and I come from a family of entrepreneurs. And, my family was actually some of the first entrepreneurs here in Tucson, Arizona. So I would say like it just runs deep, and I've always had that need and that desire. But how it started for me was actually photography. And so I started that in about 2004 and was building up a really successful business that way. But then I ended up getting a divorce and still had that drive, for entrepreneurship, but it was just not the right time, going through divorce, being a single mom of 3 kids. And that really just changes everything. And I entered back into the workforce, but I still had that burning desire to make a change in the world, to do something for me, to change my story and my outcome of life. And so at that time, I had gotten really heavily invested into just health and wellness and just changing my own body and really taking a look at what was really holding me back as far as my health. And so I actually started as a Beachbody coach. I had done a program, had really great results, and then just thought like, oh my gosh, I need to help more people achieve what I've just achieved. So I became a Beachbody coach, and I really loved it. I was helping people. It was something of my own, building that business that way, but there was still something missing. And what I noticed with the clients that I was working with was that despite following the program, despite eating the foods that were recommended, they were really struggling. And so these women were in their between 30 to 50, I would say, was kind of the range, 35, 50. is probably what it was looking like. And I was noticing, despite everything that they were doing right, they were still struggling and they were getting so frustrated. And that made me really pause, because I realized that stress had much to do with it. I was actually working for one of the top adrenal fatigue experts in the country, Dr. James Wilson, and learning so much about what happens to the body during times of stress and fatigue and just that chronic busyness. It really made me kind of step back, look, and realize that these women needed something completely different. And it wasn't just a one-size-fits-all exercise program. It wasn't a one-size-fits-all meal plan, but there was so many other components. It had to do with mindset. It had to do with lifestyle. It did have to do with diet, sleep. It had to do with stressors that are related to environments, to food, to chemicals that you're putting on your body. And all of that plays in. And so that was really what made I stepped back from Beachbody and decided that I was going to do something completely different. I wanted to basically turn health and wellness on its head from what it's normally been to something entirely different. And let's look at each person individually and creating that health and wellness, especially in women, because we are, carrying so much on our own. And, how can we do that better? So that is really what started just this overall program for me, and just this fanaticism, if you will, of my desire to change health and wellness for women who are entrepreneurial, who are career-minded, just give them something different to grab a hold of.
Yeah, I think you bring up such a good point, right? Like our stress and our hormones do affect how we're running our business, how we're running our life. And I think even more than like how we're running it, how we feel while we're doing it, right? So like one of the things I talk about is like, there's no point in doing it if you're hating every minute of it, right? And so with regard to that, is there anything that you're thinking like an entrepreneur who is on this like high stress, high anxiety is going, they're juggling the kids, the family, the business, even probably a 9 to 5 at the beginning points, right? Like what are some of the things that these women need to know, and like how is this really affecting them in other ways?
Yeah, that's a great question. When I do coaching and I have, women, they're talking about all of these different things that they're doing, and it is family, it is career, it is their business, kids, other obligations. A lot of women that I work with are involved in, they're on boards, they're involved in charities, and, they're very active. And all of these things are really good things. It's not that they're bad things, but it's just sometimes, and especially when it's a high stress time, so if there are really big projects that you're working on, maybe you're having a business launch. Yeah, exactly. That's what comes to my mind. A business launch, a big project, a big event, that takes so much time and energy and effort. And so when you have those times, it is okay and it's necessary to ask for help. So I have them basically, spell it all out. What are the things that you feel you are responsible for right now? And what are the things that only you truly can do? And what are the things that you can ask for help in? And ask for that help. That is so important. And, it's so funny because I struggle with this myself. It's just that innate sense for us. We feel like, nobody can do the things that we can do. Nobody can possibly pick up the kids from school the way I pick up the kids from school. And, nobody can possibly make a meal for my family like I can make a meal. And it's ludicrous. It's completely ludicrous. Like everybody will be okay if you ask for help. And really the people that are closest to you, that love you and support you, and they want to see you succeed, and they want to see you healthy, and they want to see you thriving, they want to help. So if you give them that opportunity to have a part in your story by being that support role, let them do it. And so it's a struggle for so many people, myself included. And I think you could probably agree, in being a mom, being a wife, being a business owner, we really want to own all of the pieces. And that's great, but sometimes we just have to let some of it go.
Yeah, I can totally relate. And I want to say too, like the men who are listening, because we do have about 10% of the audience is men.
Woo!
Yeah, I love coaching men as well.
That's awesome.
And here's the thing, like in my work with men and women, like this is not an exclusively women problem. In men, it looks a little different sometimes, but I feel like when you are really, really, I want to say almost like heart centered or like really, really invested in the things you're doing, you want the best outcome. And that's when it gets really hard to delegate. And you care a lot about the impact you're making. You also care a lot about your kids and your quality of life. And so that's, I feel like, the thing that makes it really hard. And it's interesting you say this because actually in my team right now, one of the things that I'm working on with them is empowering them to do things better than me. It's just such an interesting reflection for me. And this is something I'm always looking at in coaching is like, what are the messages that I might be getting, right? Like from coaching clients or from conversations and things I'm doing. And I think this is one of them, right? Is like, how can we empower other people to not only help us, but like possibly even do it better than us?
Yeah. I think of it, as myself being a leader, I want to empower someone to own whatever it is that they're doing. And like you said, master that skill and do it better than I do, because that's great. I am not the master of all things. And I think it would be really selfish of us to hold others back in their skills and their talents and their gifts because we feel like we have to take it all on. So it really is a win-win on both sides if we let some of that go, let others just flourish and grow in something that, they're getting really skilled at, as well as, it takes things off of our plates. And you're right, someone could probably do it way better than myself.
And I want to just give like an example, because if you're listening to this podcast, you might have been on the show notes page for the show. It's at impactdrivenentrepreneur.com/blog. And like there you can see all the show notes. And one of the things we were doing, and like I had been doing it and like really micromanaging to say the least, right? And I had said, okay, this is how we're doing it. We're doing it like this. This is the template. This is what we're doing. And my VA came to me last week and he's like, what about these buttons? I've added these buttons. I just want to know, like, do you like this or not? And I'm like, oh my gosh, it looks like 20 times better. Like, thank you. And he had just added like, little buttons on the bottom. Now, that's just a small example, right? But how are we showing somebody how to do everything so quote unquote perfectly that we're inhibiting them their creative genius to do what's better for us, right? Or better in general for the outcomes.
Yeah. And when you think about, we don't all have the same ideas. And how boring would that be if we were all the same people? We all have the same ideas and, like everything, was just as we wanted it all the time. I mean, think about how much that would hinder some really great collaborations that have happened because one person wanted it their way only. I feel like there's just so much power in people being able to flourish and take a look at, what am I doing well? What is it that is my strength, my weakness? And how can someone do that way better than me? And then you get this awesome result, of it, and so like, just think about like, if you would have like told your VA, like, no, this is really the only way that it's going to be. Like, you might have missed out on just a better aesthetically pleasing show note guide. And it's like, it's little things, it can be little things like that, or, really big things of, just the overall program design or what your website is going to look like, and what are things to include. All of that. And so I think, with us hindering others, that leads to our burnout cycle and, overall fatigue. And then you're not enjoying it. You're not having fun anymore because you're trying to do everything.
Yeah, I totally agree. What else do you feel like entrepreneurs specifically are like really prone to burnout? Like we talked about launching. So can we go there for a minute? Because I think everybody listening, if you haven't already launched, you've at least launched your business maybe, or a program or something. So like, how can we have a smoother and better launch period that's not so stressful?
Oh, this is such a good one because I am like in the middle of a launch right now. And as I think about that, I'm a firstborn, first of all. So like with the firstborn, and I don't know, if you are Mariana also, but
yeah, I am.
Okay, and I had a feeling that you and I were the same in this. But oh my gosh, I really want things perfect. I want it to be perfect, first go round. I don't want there to be any hiccups. And when there are, it's like this like fatality, and I'm being dramatic, but that's the way it feels like. You're like, oh my gosh, like someone has died. This is not perfect. And so with this launch, I really wanted to approach it completely different than, any other launch, that I've done, with my website or, another program, anything like that. I wanted it to be something that really resonated with me and the message that I am trying to convey to my audience and to the people that I work with. And so in that, there has been a lot of pre-planning, which, that does typically go into it. But also, I have allowed myself to set aside days where there is no launch activity happening. There are days when I am truly stepping away just to get a new perspective and to take some deep breaths and do something fun and different. Because when you're in it and you're looking at things super closely, I think it tends to muddy the waters. It's like a watercolor where all of the colors are kind of running into each other. And so it's really hard to look at it that close, look at your business and your launch that close. And so it's necessary to take a step back and think about, how are things going? How do you feel about it? And then I have found in doing that I've been thinking about things in a whole different way, and even things that I hadn't necessarily thought about of what to do during the launch, something that, I want to include, that I want to share with my audience. That's come from me taking time to stop and to pause. And so, I know launches, they're crazy busy, and, we are really pushing ourselves in a whole nother way than what we normally do. And that's good. I think that a lot of creativity is born out of that, but I have also seen a lot of frustration. And I don't know, like I've talked to other entrepreneurs and I've felt it, as well. But after a launch where you're just completely like dead, like there is nothing left to give. Like you can't even like fully celebrate like what you've just accomplished. And so taking that time and scheduling it in, it's just as important as, you scheduling your videos that you're going to be promoting and the emails that are going out. Taking that time for days of rest is just as important.
I absolutely love that. And I want to take it another step further. But before I do, I want to talk about this. So Ericka and I, for everybody listening, we worked with each other. And one of the things that she really helped me with was honing in on when am I actually taking care of myself during the day? Because between everything that was going on, I was quite honestly, I was just forgetting, right? So it would be things like eating and drinking water.
Yeah, those little things.
Like little things, right? And so one of the things that we came up with for me, and anyone that feels like this might be helpful for you, do this. We set like a timer on my phone. And so throughout the day, we would have a little alarm that just was a check-in and being like, what do I need for myself? And that was going off every few hours. So like every 2 to 3 hours, I was setting it. And it was so helpful. And I know for one of my recent launches, like I didn't have any of that you just described about like, oh my God, I can't even celebrate right now because I had been doing that the whole time. And I so agree with you on like, even having days off, it's okay, right? If you have, people helping you with the launch, go lean on them for a day or two during your launch. And then also how you mentioned, nothing is do or die. Like there are no emergencies in business. And For me, I think coming from the ICU setting it's way more clear, but I sometimes still forget. But I think like just remembering that like nobody's dying if one, things aren't perfect, and two, if like you didn't check the box on, commenting on 20 social media posts today or whatever your goal was, right? So I think those are really important shifts in how we're looking at the world and specifically our launch periods.
Right. And yeah, that's such a good perspective, coming from an ICU point of view, like people are not dying because, we're making a mistake or we're forgetting something. And you know what? Like one of my favorite lines is that failure is feedback. It's not a fatality. And I love that because it is, like it's just something to kind of chalk up and say, okay, like I kind of missed that boat when I did it this time, but now, like, okay, that's something that I'll be sure to include next time. Or, like you're going to get feedback as well.
Yeah.
I love to ask clients how I can do things better and how would they have felt more supported? And, was there a little bit too much support in a certain area and what would they like to focus on? So that's a good thing. That's a good thing. And so for myself, like I've gotten coaches, to help me in my coaching because I just think that that's really important to be checking ourselves as well. And what can we be doing better? What can we be letting go? And is something that someone else can do for us to make it a little bit easier? And how can we really learn and grow from what we're doing currently?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think you mentioned two things I think are so, so important. One, you can't perfect something without actually asking for help. So running it imperfectly with your clients, with your imperfect launch, and then you can make improvements. But if you don't have the willingness to allow things to be imperfect, you'll never be able to improve on that, right?
Yeah, definitely. And that goes back, to the stress that you're holding because of that. You're holding that particular ownership of if it wasn't, completely perfect this round, then I'm a failure. What am I doing? And those voices start playing in your head where, like, what am I doing? I'm a failure. I'm a fraud. Like here I am, preaching these things, but I can't do it myself. And like if it's not perfect, then how am I going to expect that out of my client? And that's the thing. That was kind of, my epiphany that I've had recently is when I'm feeling stressed and overwhelmed, I do tend to think about like, oh my gosh, like how can I possibly be a coach to others? I'm getting stressed and I'm getting overwhelmed. And it's the funniest thing. And, it goes back to like that overall selfishness. I'm not allowed to have grace, for myself. And that's completely ridiculous, but to let go and know that it's going to be okay. And I can't spend so much time and energy in freaking out about things that aren't perfect. They didn't necessarily look the way, I wanted them to. And, right now, just the overload of, the images and the messages of 6-figure launches, like I did it and you can do it too. And I want to embrace more of the journey. And I'm okay with, this might not be a 6-figure launch for me, but it's definitely a growing point from when I very first launched, and it's all about steps and taking that into perspective and not feeling, that stress and that burden and that worry of, well, like I didn't do it exactly like Mariana did it, like I'm not as successful as she is. So therefore I am a failure and I do not deserve to be in business. Like that's just very, very extreme there. Would you agree that that's just kind of that almost stimulation really, from what the messages are right now for entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I totally agree. In fact, I've done like live streams on the whole it's really not about six figures if you hate your life and you're miserable. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, right. Like, who cares? Like,
Who cares? Who cares how much money you made? Or who cares how much money you made if you had to invest like $90,000 to make a six-figure launch? Like, and you made, you know, 101,000. You know what I mean? There's so many variables that with the shiny object and the highlight reel that you just don't see, and you don't, I think you're like comparing yourself and like making up a story about how, well, therefore I must suck if I can't do that. And it's like, but you don't really know what went into it. So it's not ever fair, like ever
right.
fair. And I also totally agree. Like, there's just so many ways to do it, right? So I was coaching somebody yesterday, and all she kept saying is like, I did the webinar, but I didn't do it right. Like, but I did it wrong, right? But she had like a 20% conversion rate on her webinar,
Which is amazing.
which is amazing. And I was like, well, I don't think you did anything wrong. You ran a webinar, you got sales, you had a high conversion rate for a webinar. And it was like her first time ever doing a webinar. Okay. So like, let's just say she's done amazing. And yeah, it's just a story, right? And it's like a story she's telling herself because she didn't follow the like funnel formula that, you know, so-and-so, the guru, had laid out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, it's a very different story for you to say like, I haven't done it right, versus what I see, which is, okay, yeah, maybe this isn't automatable, right? Because she had done a lot of personal outreach. And I was like, okay, so this isn't probably like automatable, like an automated funnel with Facebook ads. Like, it's not going to work the same. However, you've ran a webinar, you've got sales, you've served your people, and you were able to gain money and get these clients and move them towards where they're going. So ultimately, there's nothing you've done wrong. Like, that's 100% right. So I totally agree with you. It's like, what is the goal? And you're never doing it wrong. You're just doing it your own way.
Yeah. And to piggyback on that, something that I really talk to my clients about is embracing the space that they're in right now. I think it's awesome to have some crazy, scary goals that really push and drive you, because I think that that does, you know, help you take it to another level. And, you know, those numbers, those goals, those statements that you've posted as, you know, what you want to be true, you know, in the future, there's power in that. There's definitely power in goal setting. So I'm definitely believing that. But I am also a big proponent of just chilling out and looking at where you are now, where you've come from, and like truly evaluate that. Because if I were to look at, you know, from the very beginning of me being a photographer, like taking that, you know, as an example of what my very first pictures look like, you know, like the very first clients that I had. And it was, you know, it's the craziest thing, because I'm like, oh my gosh, like people paid me to do this. And like, these are terrible. These are terrible. But you know what? Like, someone found the value that they sought me out then. They liked what I was doing. They appreciated my craft at that time. And they were willing to pay me for that. And that's awesome. And then when I look at, you know, like photos, you know, that I can take now, you know, like it's night and day, right? And growing that business. And then looking at my coaching business from, you know, where it started in like its humble beginnings of being, you know, a Beachbody coach, you know, like that was well and good, and that served a purpose. And, you know, I got so much education and information, and that was really the driving piece for me to look at health in a completely different way. You know, I'm looking at hormone output in my body. You know, I'm looking at, you know, micronutrients and macronutrients, and I'm looking at, you know, what's the effect of sleep if I don't get it? What is that doing to my body? And what's the importance of protein in my diet? And, you know, how does my body like convert that protein into energy? Like, it's totally different, you know, from me being like, oh, like here's a workout video and, you know, just push play, you know, that type of thing. And how I'm able to come alongside other business owners and career women and help them in their journey. I mean, like, it's ever changing. And just embracing and taking the time to appreciate how far you've come, I think is so powerful. And it's just so good for your mind and your happiness. And it really gives you just a sense of gratitude for what you have learned and what you have accomplished. And that, just really helps in minimizing that overall feeling of self-doubt. And, sometimes it can even be regret. People are like, I shouldn't have done this. I shouldn't have gotten into this business, or, I'm taking on too much. But if you really look at all that you've accomplished over time, I think that that's just really powerful.
Yeah, I love that idea. I love that. And it actually reminds me, this week in one of our mastermind calls, one of the things that I noticed was needed was some of this space, right? And one of the things I do in my business to give myself the space to number one, really appreciate what I'm doing, but also plan and work on my business rather than in my business. I do these CEO days, so I can definitely record a podcast on what that looks like and air it for the next time. But I think it's important for you to have these quarterly or every other month type of meetings with yourself where it's hold on, look how far I've come, right? There was one time it was my friend Joy and I, we were doing a launch, and we were wow, was it really that easy to just get 100 people into a Facebook group? And our list was 3 times that. It was 300 people. And then our Facebook group was 100. And we had only been promoting this for a week. And I remember my first 100 people ever in a Facebook group. It felt like forever, right? And so it's those kind of little things that you're oh, wow, it's so incremental, and it only can happen if you're looking for the gratitude and how far you've come.
Yeah, definitely. And that's a practice that I do with my clients, is a gratitude journal, because it's so powerful, to end your day with at least 3 things, that you're thankful for, you're happy about, things that went well that happened in that day. And then to start your day by looking at that, it just starts your day on such a positive note, with oh my gosh, that was really good yesterday, or wow, I can't believe I did that yesterday. That was super brave. And, I did it. And just having that heart of gratitude, I think, just that really helps with stress levels, because all of a sudden things don't feel as dire, as they did before, when we get stuck in the entrepreneurial vortex, where this is all that we know, all that we're doing, and nothing else exists outside of it. But taking that time to, was it a beautiful sunset? Was it a really yummy meal that you had? Was it a hug from, one of your kids, or, something nice that somebody said to you? All of those things, that's something to be thankful for.
I love that. I actually don't review it in the morning. I write it at night, but I like that idea. I think that's super good.
Yeah. Just starting the day on a positive note.
We've touched on a lot. So we talked about launching, we talked about owning your space and where you are and how far you've come. And is there anything else that you think entrepreneurs really need to know when it comes to burnout and kind of the effects of what we're eating, our hormones, our sleep, all of that?
Yeah, definitely. So, stress is really the leading cause of 80% of disease. Research has shown that a lot of things like diabetes, high blood pressure, hypertension, digestive issues, and depression tendencies, all of those things. I mean, even, stuff, as small as a rash, a lot of that can come from stress. And stress is a beast. And I think I'm actually, I need to make a shirt that says that, because it's so true. And when we're not managing our stress and we basically allow it to build up, and we're not taking the time to look at, what is causing this frustration, this stress, this anxiety, and this worry? What is it? When we don't take the time, it basically builds up. You have your parasympathetic and your sympathetic stress response systems, and, sympathetic is basically a chronic stress response. And so what happens when you have that chronic worry, you're not sleeping well, you're not eating well, basically your body thinks that you're dying. And so it moves all of its resources from, like the healthy, digestion and hormone production, serotonin production, melatonin production, all of that is halted because your body doesn't know that you're worried about your launch or if you're getting chased by a tiger. Like your body treats it doesn't know the difference. And so whether it's all happening in your head or if there's like a physical threat to you, your body treats it the same. And so to have that chronic stress response happening, basically your body stops functioning in the way that it was created to. And so, digestion is affected and, your immune system, that's compromised. People, and I see this so much, is that like chronic sickness, like you just feel like you're always sick or you can't get over sickness very easily. Like those colds that linger for, like 2 months or something. That's stress right there. And so it's really, really important, that you're supporting your body with good nutrients to help, in a stress response. And food is important, and sleep. And that's the number one thing that I see as the thing that's being compromised. Our industry, of entrepreneurs, just kind of that hustle mentality and that, we're constantly, on the grind and, like I'll sleep when I'm dead, type of thing. But there's just such a fallacy in that because when we're sleeping, that's when our body is definitely like cells are regenerating. And digestion is happening. Healthy hormone production is happening. Like nutrients are being delivered to have healthy, skin and tissue and hair and nails, like all of that. And so you probably see this, when people are constantly, going, and there's very little rest, it shows. Like you can just see it, on their skin, on their face, like the dark circles, the puffy eyes, that just the loss of a glow, like all of that has to do with stress. And so what I do when I'm working with clients is really, it's about sustainable wellness. That's what I promote. It's not about a particular diet. It's not about a particular exercise regimen, but it's, looking at overall, like what does your wellness look like? And that's taking a look at your sleep. That's taking a look at the stressors in your life. How can we minimize those? And, like we talked earlier, some of that is delegating, not carrying everything on our own. What does it look like when you're eating throughout the day? What are you eating? Are you grabbing like soup? Are you drinking coffee all day long, to keep the energy going? And are you eating, highly processed foods, kind of those Franken-food type of things? If it's in a package, and in a box, with the label on it, then it's probably, not the best thing for you to have often. What's your water intake? Your consumption of water. Are you setting aside time for exercise, a couple times a week at least? Are you getting strength training in? Are you, at least taking a walk? What does that look like? And it's different for everybody, and there's not a one size fits all. And I think that's kind of the fallacy that so many of us fall into. Like, I've got to do this new workout program. Like this is it. This is going to be the answer for me to stay, healthy, or this type of eating, like I've got to do, this keto, like that's really big right now. So everybody's all in for that. It's always changing, or like, I've got to become a vegan, and really listening to your body. That's the biggest piece, of that, because what works, for me may not work for you, and what works for you may not work for a friend down the street. So it's really being in tune to your body and treating your body like this temple, this vessel, because this really is, this is all we have in this life. And so it's really important to treat it well. Like we said, all of the success in the world, that's great. But if you basically burn out, you have nothing left to give. You can't even celebrate those successes. Like, what good is it?
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. And I want to add to that too, like, and also like kind of even wrap back to like the whole 6-figure, like I made 6 figures in 2 months, right? Like, and so it can be tempting to think like, well, I'm only going to be sacrificing for a short period of time. And so you kind of like make this deal with yourself. Like, I'm just not going to sleep. I'm not going to eat right just for like 2 months while I make my 6 figures. And like, I'm using that as a super extreme example. But one of the things I loved about this podcast is getting to interview some really, really, really successful people. And so if you listen back to like the first few episodes, it was actually titled the Mom Entrepreneur Success Podcast. I interviewed some really cool 6 and 7 figure business owners, and pretty much all of them, if you look at really the true pattern, were in business for themselves or were working, something very, very closely related in corporate, right? They basically had experience that dated back like 10, 15 years. And so when we're looking at, is it really important for me to eat healthy and exercise and really worry about this? Or can I just put this all on the back burner for like a couple months while I make my 6 figures? And it's like, well, no. In reality, and here's where the whole fallacy about the success stories come in, is that maybe they had quick results, but maybe they had 10 years of experience and failure, right? I think that like, it is always important so that you can enjoy that success, right? So that when you get to the success that you want, you're in the shape, in the health that you want to be in, so that you are enjoying the things that you are able to get, right? Like when you make that dream life happen.
Exactly. Yeah. We're usually doing the things that we do because we're desiring freedom. We're desiring to create this legacy for, our children, and we want to be able to enjoy it. And we want to be able to live the life that we've dreamed about. But also, it's this thing, we get so wrapped up in, what we're working on in that moment. And for whatever reason, health always seems to be like the last thing, like, well, I don't need sleep, I don't need to eat, because like you said, like it's just this temporary time. It never ends up being this temporary time because we get into those habits. And it's just like, when you're trying to turn your health around, you're getting into those healthy habits, activity becomes a daily thing that you're doing, drinking all your water, getting sleep, taking supplements, like that becomes a habit. But on the other side, when you push it back, that becomes a habit. Where you're like, okay, well, I did that for a little bit and look at how productive I was, look at what I did, and I'm not sleeping and I don't feel very good, but wow, like I got that done. So I'll just push a little bit more because it could be even better. And, instead of saying, really taking a step back and say, like, gosh, I kind of feel like crap. And, I'm really irritable. And I don't have much to give these people that I love and love me. And how unfair is that? That like the people that love you most, like those are the ones that we tend to like give the least to, because other things seem more pressing. And so really taking that step back of, you can't sacrifice health because it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable. And we want to enjoy what we're creating. We want to be able to grow and to thrive. And, those crazy, scary goals that we have ahead, we're not going to get there if we let the health go. So that's definitely, like my hill to die on. And I feel really passionate about it because it's such an integral part of what we're doing.
And I think too, like there's also something to be said about like optimal functioning, right? For us to expect optimal functioning on our part, right? Like being a better leader, being a better CEO, being a better marketer, being better at sales, like whatever those goals are, we must be functioning properly, right? Like you hit the nail on the head when you said, are we too tired to even make the call? Are we too tired because we're in decision fatigue and our hormones are all over the place because we haven't slept in 3 days? Those are important things to ask yourself, right? Like when you're looking at functioning at an optimal level to run your business.
Yeah, definitely. I don't want my clients to feel okay. Like that's not my goal. My goal is to get clients feeling like amazing again, to feel energized and revitalized. Like that's my goal, not just okay or, like happy enough, type of thing. Like where is the living in that? And you want to be impactful in, to take your word. You want to be as impactful as you can. And to do that, like your health energy levels, like they need to be up. And you can't do that if you're really like just pushing health to the back burner and saying, I'll get to it later. Because here's the thing with that is, we tend to not worry about our health until sickness comes. And oh my gosh, like how terrible is that to, have to pay attention at that point when we've been given, these chances. And it's not even like this huge undertaking. It literally is, getting 8 hours of sleep, getting enough water, eating some nutrient dense meals. It's not rocket science, but, at the same time, like people just need that accountability, that, guide, almost a map to help them to do those things, and some people think, like, that's so crazy, like, why would I invest in a wellness coach, like to tell me, that I need to eat each day, like, because you're forgetting. And, if you have that accountability.
Yeah. Perfect example.
Yeah. Mariana, like, what are you eating each day? I'm like, what am I eating each day? I don't know. It's not healthy. So to just have someone come alongside you, like, I think that's just really important. And, just like we get coaches so that we can deepen the impact that we have in our business, getting a coach to deepen the impact of your health so that you can continue to run an effective and thriving business, that's a big piece.
I absolutely love that. So tell us, because I know you have a really cool free resource for everybody. So tell us about it and like where people can get it.
Yeah, awesome. So I created a checklist for all of you that maybe you think that you are on the verge of burnout, but you're not quite sure. I've created a checklist for you, and it's the 5 signs of burnout. And so taking a look at, some of the things that you should be looking out for, and then, what are your steps to move beyond that so that you can be healthy again. So I created that free resource. It's at erickaeller.com/burnout. And there you'll be able to download the checklist.
Yay. Thank you so much. And it's been such a great conversation talking with you about burnout, leadership, entrepreneurship, and really just some cold hard truths, right? Like about health and like what is the real investment that we're making in our business? Because I think we need to have a long-term vision for where we're going and how we want to be when we get there. Not just like, I'm going to put everything else on the wayside until I make such and such goal, right?
Right.
So thank you so much. It's been amazing. Everybody, please get your free resource, and I will chat with you next week, everybody. Head on over to impactdrivenentrepreneur.com where you can find an arsenal of videos, blog posts, and previous podcast episodes to help you increase your profit and impact. Again, impactdrivenentrepreneur.com and click on blog. Enjoy.